You are listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZWLP Conroe and 106.1 KZCCLP Conroe and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
I never overthink it, do what I want, and I do it my way. I never try too hard, I'm so awesome, so effortlessly. Watch me take some notes, 'cause I'm
This is Andrea Kolski, and you're listening to Justice is Blonde on Lone Star Community Radio. And you can subscribe to the Justice is Blonde YouTube channel and hear past episodes and discourse. But today we're super excited to be joined by Jody Czajkoski, City Council candidate running for position 5. Jody, we're super happy to have you here today. How you doing?
I'm good, Andrea. Thank you for having me.
So first of all, obviously, based on your amazing name, we can get a sense that you're Polish. And besides blondes, our second favorite thing on the show are Polish people. So we're really happy to have you here as a fellow Polak.
Yaczka masz.
So let's talk about, first of all, you happen to be married to one of the most fabulous other Polish folks, criminal defense attorneys in town, of the non-blonde variety, Nicole Czajkoski. What's that like, being married to a criminal defense attorney? Is there fights at home? How does it go?
No, we have a normal marriage. No fights. Actually, we had a big fight last night, and I needed to do a little making up to her because it's tax time.
Oh, okay. Yes, we know how that goes.
She has to do the taxes, and we usually fight once a year, and it comes tax time. But it all works out. You got to forgive each other and say a little prayer at the end of the night, and it's all golden the next day.
And stay Polish and stay fabulous in the meantime, no doubt, right?
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
what I will tell you, this is interesting, and I'm going to ask you this question. I was recently interviewed on another related topic, and somebody said to me, what's the hardest part about being a criminal defense attorney? What's the hardest part for you? And I thought about it for a second, and maybe I should have thought about it for more than a second, but I responded was the hardest part about being a lawyer is the non-lawyer part of being a lawyer. It's just the day-to-day grind of running a business and dealing with the tax issues. I mean, what do you think from being married to a criminal defense attorney? Do you think that that's probably the hardest part for your lovely, adorable wife?
Well, you guys sometimes catch most of the negative aspects of society, and you can't help when you run your own business. You're definitely going to bring it home with you. But at the same time, a lot of these people that have made minor and major criminal offensive, they're looking at turning points in their life. So you guys are ministers and directors and definitely can change lives. And definitely I'm honored to work with the two top female attorneys in Montgomery County and definitely the two best looking female attorneys in Montgomery County.
And most Polish by last name, for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for saying that. But, it is true. Like, I know your wife does take some of this home, and we do have sort of we got to save people mentality. And some of that comes home where you're like, hey, Jody, what can we do to help this person? And you certainly, as somebody that's running for city council and somebody that's very involved in the local community, you might have some suggestions that somebody else that didn't care as much about people and their hearts may not come up with. I mean, you're in it, right?
We're all looking for love in the right places, and most of your clients and my wife's clients, usually, there's been a problem at home or a lack of structure or a breakdown of the family structure and the lack of a father figure at home. And I think if you talk to the Texas penal system and look at the prisons in Huntsville, Texas, I think last time I checked, it was like 91% of the criminals in the institutional prison there are from broken homes and lack father figures around the home. So big problem in our country.
So, and you can speak also as a father because you have 3 kids. They're all crushing life, right? They're already taking over the world in their small legal communities of their schoolrooms, right?
I'm extremely blessed, and I think I'm going to have at least one lawyer and hopefully one pastor, one priest out of the mix there.
And then the third one's going to do what?
We're going to pray for her.
We're just going to pray for her. Okay. So let's talk about your bid for city council position number 5. Were the first 4 taken? Is that why you decided to go with 5?
There's 2 open seats, 2 gentlemen that have done an amazing job here in town, Guy Martin and Gil Snyder. are both term limited, and position 4 was open, and position 5 was open.
So you went with high five.
High five.
High five, position 5, right? High five, right? So tell us about what kind of brought you to City Council. I know you're a great family man, great father, very involved in our community. You're familiar that Conroe is where is it in the top 10 cities growing?
Fastest growing city in the country.
In the country,
50,000.
folks that are listening.
Come to Conroe.
Come to Conroe.
This is where it's happening.
This is where big things are happening. So, so you want to be a part of that development, change, and family sort of structure of being in Conroe, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. We've got a good foundation here in Conroe. All our city administration and staff, they're doing a wonderful job, and it's time to take it to the next level, and opportunities knocking at the door. The path of growth, as you know, the Woodlands is full, parties over there, and all the opportunities.
Do you mean the party's over, meaning there's no more room for growth?
Yeah, no more room for growth. Right. There's a couple tracts available, and the majority of the land left in the Woodlands owned by Howard Hughes Corporation, that is the developer, and they're going to go vertical. Most of that will be high-rise office, high-rise condos, and Conroe's pro-growth. We've got a major freeway running through our city.
Are you talking about IH-45?
IH-45, which is wonderful for transportation 90% of the time.
Yes, it's quite functional most of the time.
And we've got a airport here that can basically handle any airplane that Hobby Airport can handle.
We're talking about 3083, that great, delightful airport off of 3083?
We're talking about the wonderful North Houston Airport here in Conroe, Texas.
So that certainly is my favorite airport because it's closest to my home. So in a perfect world, I would shuttle in and out of there on a regular basis. But I don't always have access to the private planes that are required to get in and out of that airport.
Are you saying that your Learjet is out of gas?
I'm saying that I do not currently have access to the levels of flight options I would prefer.
Well, it's a beautiful, wonderful airport. No, Conroe airport transportation, I mean, we've got a beautiful lake that's very affordable. And if your Lake Conroe happens to be a little too crowded for you, you could always bounce over to Lake Livingston or Lake Houston. Not to mention, you could be at the coast in an hour and a half. So, I mean, if you look at the rest of our country right now, the opportunities are endless in Conroe, and I couldn't think of a greater place to be.
Well, the nice thing about living and practicing in the Montgomery County area is you're close to the main business center. As far as Conroe for us is where we go to court, where the courthouse is located, where the jail is located, where the probation department is located, and for us it's a straight shot over from either if you live in Conroe, if you live in Montgomery or Willis, it's a 20-30 minute drive tops for just about anybody. And realistically, there's not a lot of traffic, which is nice kind of living in a big city that you don't have the traffic that you experience in Houston or some of these other big cities where you have a lot of development. No,
Conroe is an original town, founded in the late 1800s, and it's a quality community. My focus in our community is, number one, to attract businesses that will provide higher income jobs while protecting our citizens' quality of life. And secondly, is to strategically prepare the city's infrastructure and mobility for the projected substantial growth of Conroe, as we mentioned
Number
earlier.
one in the Wall Street Journal. I think I've said this probably on 5 of my last 10 episodes. Number one, Conroe. Not everybody gets the question right, but you got it.
Best place to be in the world right now.
Well, especially because you get to be interviewing Jody Czajkoski. Right now here at Lone Star Radio, it's the best place to be for me.
Well, I'm extremely honored to be here.
So,
Community through collaboration.
And isn't it true that as far as somebody running for city council, you are in the younger kind of genre of folks that are running? You're a young man. You look like you're 25.
Well, thank you very much.
But I know you're a little bit older.
I'm 28.
But
I'm 41. I'm joking with you.
Isn't it true that you're in the younger kind of grouping of folks that are running for these positions?
It's time. I mean, you and I.
I mean that in a great way. You got enthusiasm and youth and passion.
You and I are both. Are we young or are we middle aged? I think we're kind of in the mix.
Old
right
enough
there.
to. I like to say old enough to know better, still too young to care.
There you go. It's time though. Our country. We need young leaders to step up. Our fathers and forefathers have done their job, and it's time for us to get to work. And it takes a good mix. I mean, you look at our city government and state government. It takes a wisdom and youth, and definitely need some synergy, and that's my background. I'm good at building collaboration and making contacts and promoting unity in our community and getting all the forces to work together as one.
Well, I know folks that have listened to this show or this network in the past. I know you haven't done Justice is Blonde in the past, but you've worked with the community promoting Faith Fest and other operations and organizations that you're involved with. Am I right?
Yeah, Faith Fest was a unity event, and it's actually been going on for 5 years now. And our major focus through this nonprofit is to promote several local nonprofits here in town that are really the heroes, the angels, the saints of the world. And these guys, they do all the work for a little bit of glory. To mention a couple in the past we've worked with is All the King's Horses out of Montgomery, and they work with inner city youth and kids through horse training and horse therapy. And locally right down the street is
Is All the King's Men?
Compassion United, Conroe House of Prayer, Luke Reedus, who is a little angel, and this guy has a program right now that's take 10 people off the streets, and he'll turn 5 of them back into tax-paying working citizens with no government assistance.
Well, that's really interesting that you're talking about that, because there are a couple of kind of nationwide issues that are in the forefront. One of is kind of this concept of a community helping standard where every person who's a citizen can get a stipend from the government to promote, for every person, here's a flat amount of money that we would like to give you. And after the break, we'd like to talk to see how you feel about this sort of socialization where every citizen gets a flat amount, whether it's $500 or $800, regardless of whether you're working or not working, to kind of promote a non-welfare system in society. That's kind of on the forefront of our nation here recently. But we'll talk about that, and we also, I hope, can get your input on the Second Amendment. I wore camouflage today because the Second Amendment is under siege, and we certainly want to find out what you think about the Second Amendment, or just offer some dialogue about some of the issues that our nation is facing dealing with the Second Amendment. You're listening to Justice is Blonde on Lone Star Community Radio, and we'll look forward to hearing back from you after the break.
You won't believe until you see. This is gonna be a fun ride. Yeah, we're all about a good time. Yeah, we're all about a good life. Good energy, come.
Hey guys, this is Connor.
This is Dick.
This is Chris.
And we're with the Ticket Stub Podcast every Thursday live at noon on 104.5 and 106.1 FM in the Conroe area. Also, anytime at irlonestar.com. You go to irlonestar.com/TTS. You can find all of our social media.
And don't forget, we give away 2 tickets to the Grand Theater on every show.
If you like movies and you like complaining or celebrating anything that has to do with the silver screen, check out the Ticket Stub Podcast and join us every Thursday at noon o'clock on Lone Star Community Radio.
Don't forget to download the Lone Star Community Radio app for your Google Play or Apple Store. Bring Montgomery County's community radio with you anywhere with your smartphone or tablet. If you are in the Conroe area, tune in on FM. That is Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1.
This is Andrea Kolski, and you're listening to Justice is Blonde on Lone Star Community Radio. And if you're just joining us, we're joined by extra special guest Jody Czajkoski, who's running for Conroe City Council, position number 5. And we've already discussed that it wasn't because the first 4 were taken, but it was because it was the most attractive bench to Jody Czajkoski. And Jody is highly qualified to be in this position. He's been a resident of Conroe for 14 years. And as he's waving the American flag, today I'm dressed in camouflage because before the break we discussed that the Second Amendment is under siege because we have a lot of discourse and dialogue in our country about what are we going to do with the Second Amendment. Enough of these mass shootings, spree shootings. Enough is enough, and the voices have been loud in the past, but they seem to be getting louder and louder when you have your children go to school, and when they're at school, you find themselves in a situation where they don't come home because of some lunatic who got their hands on an assault rifle. So what do you think about that, Jody? How do you feel about the Second Amendment? Do you think it's something that, is in crisis mode. As Texans, no one's going to easily depart with their right to bear arms. So I'm just going to throw that out there. Not a very popular position to take. Go ahead.
Don't mess with our
Don't mess
guns,
with Texas.
Don't mess with our beer, and don't mess with our barbecue.
The barbecue is something that I haven't ever had anybody say, don't mess with our barbecue.
No, I definitely agree with our constitutional rights to bear arms. I own a couple guns.
Do you own any assault rifles?
I don't own any assault rifles.
Okay. When you go hunting, do you take a Tech 9? Do you borrow them from your friends?
I don't.
You don't need to spree shoot anything,
I have
right?
guns, and I take people hunting. I don't hunt much anymore, but I do enjoy the outdoors.
Well, that could be because you're too busy running for city council, am I right? You don't have time to go hunting?
Time is definitely part of the question. I like to dove hunt a little bit. That's fine.
Okay, so as far as, if we start eroding away at the Second Amendment, which I have here pulled up, you can start thinking about what you feel about that. But do you think that it is a Second Amendment issue where we've gotten to be too free with putting that in folks' hands? Or do you think it's a situation where...
I don't see anything wrong with reevaluating and seeing if you could potentially make it more stringent on people out there that are looking to buy guns or assault rifles. I think we should basically reevaluate everything daily. Is that the underlying problem in our society? No, I don't think that's our problem.
Well, let's talk about the Bill of Rights Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. December 15th, 1791. So this has been a very important part of our Constitution since that time frame. And so we do have a duty to be able to keep ourselves free from maybe the government. People feel a need, at least in Texas,
Sure.
We got to secure their houses, secure their homes. There's a flag in the courtroom that says, come and take it, and I definitely think that has a lot to do with the gun owners' rights and mentalities. But at some point, do you think that, if we raise the age of gun owners' rights, that might have a variable where things like that would happen in Parkland would not happen? If we make it where you have to be 21 to buy a gun, or what do you think?
I don't see any reason not to evaluate that situation and many others. I think you also got to look not only with guns and assault rifles, but I think you got to look at some of the medication. I think you look at a lot of these shooters. Most of them are disturbed individuals. This last young man that took 17 lives, he had lost his mother, no father around. Goes back to the breakdown of the family structure in our country. So definitely, I think you evaluate the medical condition and just evaluate the family structure. We need to put everything on the table and not look at and point at just one issue in gun control.
So as far as right now, if you want to go out and buy a firearm and you have a mental illness and it's diagnosed, we as lawyers have fought to keep people's privacy under HIPAA, and where you can't just go out and get somebody's psychological records, or they're not readily available to the internet, or Academy if you're buying your assault rifle at Academy. But nonetheless, it's, in Texas, we're 47th in the nation in dealing with mental health issues. I don't know if you remember the Andrea Yates case where this young
We're 47th out of 50?
Out of 50.
That's not good.
It's not a good place to be. Texas, we need to be at least one to three at everything, right? We're number one in size from the inside.
Best economy, best looking women. I would say we should definitely be top 5.
Number one growing city in the country.
There you go.
So we should at least not be 47 when it comes to mental health issues. But we didn't have somebody that was mentally ill have this spree attack that happened in Florida, and I don't know where they come in line with the mental health numbers. But I will just say that with schools, at least in regards to the last shooting, with schools, if you have a search at a school, the Fourth Amendment is softened because they weigh the privacy interest of the individual with the fact that it occurs at a school. So you could certainly say if you are if you're enrolled in a public school or private school and you have a psychological issue, or you're expelled, or you've made a threat, or anything along those lines, your privacy is not something you have a right to. And you essentially have people at enrollment agree to these are the terms if you're going to public school, almost like a concession. That way, at least you know there's a crazy, potentially, and I don't mean to say crazy in a lighthearted way, but there's a someone with some mental issues that you may want to keep an extra eye out for
Sure.
if your son or daughter is in a class with that person.
Sure.
So that certainly is a suggestion as far as softening, at least from a high school level, the closeness of psychological records, maybe making them more readily available to members of the administration, school, parents. If somebody had made a threat involving a weapon at school, you would want to know who they are and that the threat was made. Don't you think?
Well, we need to work together. Absolutely, we need to communicate. And from what I heard is the FBI and the local law agencies there in Florida were contacted about this individual because he had an arsenal of weapons and he was making threats, and that's a red flag where we come from here in Montgomery County. And it seemed like there were other issues on the FBI's mind at that time, and more concerned with President Trump talking to the Russians versus
Right.
a
Who's
kid that's gonna
looking at
shoot up
whose
the school.
emails and what texts have been exposed, rather than focusing on an issue that's an identified issue from an identified person. And as a mom and you as a dad, if you know that something went down at your school, and you say, hey, a threat was made, there was somebody that brought a gun to school or somebody that made this threat, you as a parent want to know who that is. As a defense attorney, you want to protect those folks, but I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm playing both sides. So I've had folks bring guns to school who get charged at school as juveniles. I've had folks make threats at school. And what I'll tell you is when the letter goes out to the parents, the individual who made the threat, who has the gun, is rarely identified by name. And that, I think, is a situation that could at least identify this person as potentially a concern. Maybe don't sit next to them in class, or maybe don't upset them, or, I'm not making light of the situation. I'm just more suggesting that there's other ways that we can identify people with potential mental illness if there's threats being made or things along those lines.
We need to work together. It's the United States of America.
It's the community standard that you're talking about, as far as running for council is, we have a community, we need to protect the community. And as a defense attorney, I want to protect each individual. As a mom, I want to know who the kids are at school that are making threats so that we can be extra nice to them and make sure they're getting the resources they need.
Absolutely. Give them a whole lot of love.
Yeah, just make sure they show up at your house for Sunday dinner, or you meet them at the barbecue.
That's what we have to do. I mean, the kids get a bad rap these days, and at the end of the day, they're my kids. They're your kids. So if it's someone's fault, these kids are a product of their environment. If it's someone's fault, it's my fault, and that's what we have to do. We might have one kid or two kids, but there's no reason we can't bring 4 or 5 kids home and show them love and show them respect. They're yearning for love. They're yearning for leadership and just a lot of that these days. So
A lot of that. Now, if the viewers are listening on the radio, I don't know what the chicken hand is. What does that mean?
well, a lot of people bump their gums these days, and a lot of racket out there. And these kids, they grew up in a different world than you or I did. I mean, I listened to my parents. You didn't have all the social media. You didn't have all the TV. But these days, they are exposed. So
I mean, I definitely think, and we've talked about this on other shows, is that we're in a different generation where folks are more concerned about, what's on Instagram or what's on social media, and they'll say or do things that they think will impress other people.
Sure.
Sometimes that's not really them, or just maybe an effort to garner a reaction or to get good or bad attention.
sure,
So,
they're
certainly,
looking for attention. You said it right there.
you certainly got to keep your eyes open dealing with not just your youth, but America's youth. But what do you think about, there is sort of a push and a dialogue about, let's put armed guards outside every classroom. And, if it costs the taxpayers more money and they don't want to pay for it, let's make the gun companies pay for it. What do you think about that possible issues? If you want to keep your guns and you want to not have any changes or infringement on guns rights, then you pay to have armed guards in our classrooms to protect our youth. Do you think that's a good possible compromise, or
sounds like a military base.
sort of like a
Yeah, you know, the
protect at all
conversation
costs?
yesterday was, should we arm teachers?
Right.
And I grew up with a lot of teachers that are male and female that are very good with a weapon,
Right.
a lot better than I am. So I would say if a teacher's good with a weapon and they want to carry a weapon, God bless them. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, and I will say, I certainly, as a citizen of America and Texas, have a right to bear arms. I will tell you that as a clumsy person, I choose not to generally carry a firearm because I'm a little bit on the clumsy side. And I, certainly could see a scenario where I would accidentally
blow your toe off?
shoot myself in the wrong place. And as you know, your wife and I are good friends. As you know, I sometimes I misplace things. So that would certainly not be something that I would want to misplace.
Sure, and out of 5 teachers, there are a lot of teachers that are similar, but there are
Right.
teachers that would like to have a gun, and
Right.
why not?
So it's kind of like if you think you're proficient at it and you go to the range and you've taken the classes and you're aware, let's let those folks arm themselves. But then what happens if you have a child that gets out of hand and they, attack the teacher and all of a sudden, they disarm the teacher? What do you do in that situation if you're letting just a regular person have a firearm at the school? Don't you think that provides more of a risk?
Well, I think what did President Trump said? He would just run in there and take control. He no gun or without a gun.
With a box of Tic Tacs, you just go in and take charge, and you just do whatever you can.
We can talk all day, but
Yeah.
You'll react as a parent,
Right,
as
exactly.
an American citizen, and you never know till you're there.
Well, we do need to take a break to hear from our sponsors, but we appreciate having Jody Czajkoski here today talking to you about his bid for City Council, position number 5, and sharing his thoughts on the Second Amendment. You're listening to Justice is Blonde on Lone Star Community Radio.
I never try too hard, I'm so awesome, so effortlessly. Watch me take some notes, cause I'm confident and
Listen in Mondays at noon to hear Conroe news from local nonprofits, businesses, upcoming events, Conroe Park events, news stories, and information that matters to you with your host, Margie Taylor of Taylorized PR. For more information about being a guest, visit irlonestar.com/Conroe Culture.
A Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show, with monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the station message line at 936-647-3776 to take your first step into the radio world.
This is Andrea Kolski, and you're listening to Justice is Blonde on Lone Star Community Radio. And before the break and during this show, we've been talking to Jody Czajkoski, who's running for City Council for Conroe, our favorite little city here where Lone Star Community Radio is, position number 5. And seems like a very young man, very qualified, very passionate, and we're really happy to have you here to share your vision for Conroe, your vision for community caretaking, ministering, providing your knowledge and history to help the folks of Conroe. Before the break, we were visiting a little bit about the Second Amendment and whether it should change, what some potential things, propositions that folks have made regarding change. But as Texans, I think that we as a state will never get dug in on changes to the Second Amendment that impact or restrict gun owners' rights. Do you think that's fair to say?
I think that's fair to say.
If the other 49 states go in different directions, I think Texas will be
Independent.
hanging on like we always have. And so we do have a lot of great things about living in Texas. We don't have to pay taxes, state taxes. And we're one of the few states that has that. We also, as Texans, have a right to a jury trial where the jury determines punishment. And we're only one of 2 states that also has that very special right. And, when we're talking about Texas and all the big and wonderful things that can happen here, we know you've lived here for 14 years. You have a wonderful, beautiful wife. You're a very active member of your church, which is less than a mile from here, Sacred Heart Catholic Church, and you are also just very passionate about this community, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You do development of land here, and you help kind of grow the community on your own. Am I right?
Our day job is we own a commercial real estate investment firm, MHW Commercial Real Estate, and we broker, develop, and invest in commercial real estate projects. And I tell people, we're in a relationship business.
Right.
You don't invest a large, substantial amount of money with an individual until you trust that individual and you get to know that individual. And through development comes housing, comes stores, come rooftops. This county is roughly going to take on about another 500,000 people in the next 12 to 15 years is what the current census is
Well, I'm
saying.
looking at 336 the other day. I'm driving down the road. I see they're bringing a new Kroger. They've got a Marshall's Home Goods. They've got a new shopping mall that they're putting up there. I know they're developing an area that used to be run by the Boy Scouts. It was a little Boy Scouts area. Am I right?
Yeah,
45 South.
Camp Strake is now Grand Central Station.
So, and it's going to be like Central Station with the volume of businesses and homes and new folks that get to live there too. Am I right?
Yeah, I think met with the head of engineering for the city of Conroe yesterday, a gentleman named Mr. Tommy Woolley, who does a wonderful job. And I believe they said they're looking at about 25 new plats for commercial buildings or subdivisions a month. And there's over 150 new developments in the works in the Conroe city limits.
So what's going to happen to the Boy Scouts though? Where are they going to take their fund to?
Oh, they've moved. They took their money and they bought a tract up close to up north of the National Forest. They bought another tract. They want to be more in a
Right, they want to
rural
be more.
area,
Yeah,
so
they
it
want to be
works out
more.
great for 'em.
They don't want to be by development. They want to be away from the development.
And
want to
they did very well. They sold that tract before the oil field slowed down, so they sold it at a premium. And the development's beautiful. I mean, you're 2,500 acres there at the corner of 336 and 105, Main and Main of Montgomery County. And out of that, only a little bit less than half of the tract is developable. So all those beautiful lakes along the San Jacinto River, quality of life, nature preserves, hidden jewels are there.
We're stuck with them in a good way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. Now, as somebody that deals with real estate development, do you deal with eminent domain issues with the government forced taking? Do you know about that?
I know about it. I've never been involved in an eminent domain.
So what's interesting about that is essentially where the government comes in and they decide, like the signs in the courtroom, come and take it, where they're going to come and take your land. And so it's nice to know that at least as far as here locally and as someone that's very involved in the business, that you haven't had to deal with that issue with great regularity. But, certainly if you have roads that are being developed, the government can come in and say, you know what, we need your house where we want to put this road that's going to better the community, and they'll pay you for the value of your home, whether it's reasonable or not. That we do have that right where the government can come in and say, we need this more than you do, right?
I mean, if you've got a project that is to the betterment of society and it's going to help 99% of the citizens out there, and there's one person and they don't want to go, it's worked for hundreds of years.
Usually you're gonna lose out in that.
Well,
in that
I've had
scenario.
clients involved in the eminent domain process, and it's a negotiation. I've had a couple clients that came out looking very well. They got a premium for their property, and I've had other clients that said, hey, they got 50 cents on the dollar. So
Right.
So-
It just depends if you wanted to go or what was going on with you at that time.
depends on also how good of a lawyer you have.
That's true. So always best to hire a qualified lawyer in your field to help with you and whatever your area of need is. So find somebody that specializes in the government taking. Don't hire Nicole or myself who are specialize in the criminal defense or family law aspects. Fair to say?
Hey, fair to say.
So let's talk about too your history as a politician. This is new for you. Now we do know there's something going on right now in Houston that you are formally involved in, also very passionate about as a Texan. It's the Houston Rodeo.
Houston Rodeo.
You have some history and success as a bull rider. Am I correct?
That was my first real job.
Your first love and passion was riding bulls. So tell me, and this is kind of putting you on the spot, but tell me how riding bulls can translate to running as a politician, getting into politics.
Well, I think the rodeo circuit and the political world and the business world are very similar. When I was in the rodeo circuit, I was a professional bull rider at 18 years old.
Did you ever lose your teeth?
I've got all my good teeth, but I did lose a couple of brain cells and a little blood and bone matter. But in the rodeo world, when I was professionally touring, I always would say a little prayer before I got on the animal, because these animals can kill you.
Right,
It's the
that's
size
right.
of a car out there jumping around by your head, and I would ask the good Lord for His guidance, and you basically put it in His hands, and if it's your time to go, it's your time to go. Because if you open the gate and you're scared, you're going to get hurt, and so you have
Right.
to learn to block out your fears and move forward with the best interest, and give it all up to God.
And so that's the same way you're attacking your run for political office. Am I correct?
That's the only
Running
way.
forward, gate open, charge forward, leave it all up to God, but also obviously be honorable and willing to do whatever it takes.
You nod your head and open the gate, and everything else will take care of itself.
And don't be scared, right?
Well, fear is part of life, but you can definitely learn to block fears out and move forward for sure.
Now, as far as winning, you have one other opponent, right? Am I correct?
Correct.
Who's running against you. And then this is early voting that we're dealing with right now. Am I correct?
Early voting, we're actually two races. County race is going on right now, but
Okay.
the city race really doesn't get rolling until after the county race.
Okay.
So we're May 5th is election day for the city of Conroe election,
Okay.
and then early voting actually starts April 23rd.
Okay, so if people want to find out who you are as a candidate, they need to find out before April 23rd.
They need to find out today.
Okay, they
And-
need to find out today,
and,
certainly.
and they're more than welcome to call me anytime with good constructive criticism on what we can do better in the city of Conroe. My cell phone is 713-560-6069. That's 713-560-6069.
And they can also text you. I assume you have text capabilities as a young man living in this century. Am I correct?
They can text as well, but I'd prefer to talk.
Yeah, that's true. You're good with the talking, so you want to certainly persuade them if they're not already persuaded into your position. So April 23rd is early voting, and then say it again.
May 5th is general election.
May 5th is a general election. So if somebody is not a registered voter, what do they do if they show up and they have a driver's license? Are they going to be able to vote? Do you know?
They have to get registered, but it's a simple card, easy process. They can call City Hall, and they'll take them straight through it. Very
So if
simple.
they show up at the polls with a driver's license that reflects their address, can they register right there on the spot, or do they have to do it ahead of time? Do you know?
I need to find out. I know they can do it ahead of time, but I'll look into it.
Certainly, because you're going to have people that may, be new to the area because they're just moving to Conroe as it's the fastest growing city in the country. And they may show up here and say, I live here now, and I really want to vote for Jody Czajkoski.
Well, for the next couple months until the election, they can call City Hall, Conroe, Texas. Just
Okay.
Google Conroe City Hall
Conroe City
and
Hall.
ask for SOCO, which is the city secretary,
Okay.
and she'll make it very easy.
Now, we do need to take a break to hear from our listeners, but when we come back, we'll find out if you have any events coming up where people can either get to know you, get to meet you, find out more about you as a candidate, and what other things they can learn and be educated about what's going on at the Conroe City Council.
Take some notes 'cause I'm confident and I get it done. I speak for the ones who do it best. That's right, my generation.
For those of you who like your partners, your gumbo, and your music salty, well, we're here to help with the music. Julian Shea here, host of Lone Star Country Nights Thursday, your weekly dose of roots and Americana and all the music that makes this part of the country special. We stir in Western swing, honky-tonk, Zydeco, Texas blues, outlaw country, and put a pinch of red dirt, and then we smoke it over a slow fire. Then listen to the results Thursday nights on Conroe's 104.5 and 106.1 and worldwide at irlonestar.com.
Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show with monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5 and 106.1 and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the station message line at 936-647-3776.
This is Andrea Kolski, and you're listening to Lone Star Community Radio. Today, we're joined by very special guest, Jody Czajkoski. We're also joined by new music put together by my lovely husband, who I guess thinks that this is a new dance track, intro track. I guess we're all about a good time and a good life. And that's why Jody is running for city council, is because he believes that as a citizen of Conroe, you can be about a good life, and you can also have a good time while having a good life.
You only live once.
You only live once. So if you want to catch the rest of this episode, you should subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Justice is Blonde. That way you can see some archives and maybe hear when his lovely wife was on the show in the past. And she also, when given the opportunity of bull riders or team ropers, she did pick the bull rider option in the lightning round. And before the break, we were talking about Jody's transition from 18-year-old reckless bull rider to 41-year-old running for city council. Heart, passion hasn't changed from his days when he rode the bulls, just riding them in a safer way, hopefully, right?
There you go.
You're riding the bull of the political circuit.
Hey, this is the biggest, best bull in the country right now, being in Conroe, Texas.
Conroe, Texas.
In the next 2 months, I've been meeting with all the city officials and upper administration and some of the staff there, just trying to figure out what we can do better. We can always get better. Anything from our law firm to our church to our ministry, we can always make positive contributions. And I'd love to get feedback from the community on what are the issues. Annexation's been a big deal. There was a uproar a couple years ago with the annexation of April Sound. So that's definitely a hot topic and a hot subject. Also, in the paper today, there's some lobbying going for our neighbors south to drop the level of Lake Conroe 3 foot, which
that's absolutely
would definitely make a big difference here in Conroe and damage a lot of properties as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I think what's happening is there is a little bit of a discussion that perhaps the height of the lake contributed to the mass flooding and the decisions to release the dam during the hurricane. Well, not during the hurricane. Hurricane Harvey.
Hurricane Harvey.
Yeah. Then I started thinking about the other snow
We've
issues.
had a couple
We've had all the
storms.
storms. You get brainwashed by all of them. So there has been some discussion, and living in that lake community, certainly it would devalue the property out there by 20% if people who used to have boat slips don't have boat slips anymore. And some of the lake businesses that have restaurants that have the boat docks, people can't get to by water anymore. So certainly I could see how if the lake levels were lowered, it could have an impact on our community.
It would cost the property owners and taxpayers a lot of money. But there's no study to prove that would help at this time. Could we be good neighbors? Could next time there's a 1,000-year storm coming, could we open up the dam and let out a little water so it doesn't harm our friends downstream? Absolutely.
A little at a time rather than wait.
Absolutely. But you got to understand, we've had three 500-year floods in the last 3 years. So how's that work out? We've had 3 of them in the last.
We've had some bad storms.
That's some bad storms.
So, but as far as other things that are kind of hot topics for the community, living and working in downtown Conroe, obviously this studio has had quite a makeover, so that's great to see that happening. Just already here in our community, we have businesses that are themselves developing more, and you have, some restaurant development downtown Conroe, which brings people downtown Conroe and breweries and things like that. How do you feel about Southern Star Brewery? That's kind of a new Conroe brewery, right?
It's my favorite, that blonde bombshell.
Well, that's great. You're on Justice is Blonde. You picked the
blonde
right beer.
Bombshell. There you go. Hey, there's Conroe's becoming a destination. As a potential council member, as a community leader, I look at low-hanging fruit. We're all looking for sales tax dollars to pay our police and firemen and city officials, and you start looking around Lake Conroe. I mean, to improve the property, to make the area around Lake Conroe, from Papa's Ice House to Sam's Boat, more walkable, more desirable, to where you and your family could go out there and have dinner, have a drink, get some live music, and not get run over on the highway. That's something I think we should definitely look into.
Do you think there's any potential in the next 5 years or so for there being any sort of public transportation out in the Conroe, Montgomery County area that would be viable, doable? Is that on anybody's radar?
We have a public transportation. We have a bus that goes around Conroe now that they started a few years ago, and it's needed. I mean, the millennials, the empty nesters, I mean, A lot of these kids these days, they don't get a driver's license until they're 21 years old. And we need to make Conroe, and even downtown Conroe, where you can work, play, and live here as well. We need to make it walkable. So the lake, downtown Conroe, I think there's tremendous opportunity. A lot of the local leaders here in Conroe have already started with a master plan for redeveloping and making downtown Conroe walkable and livable.
Yeah, I mean, and as far as, the lake I know is not all Conroe. Some of it's Montgomery and other areas. But, we do have the waterway in those areas that are really developed, and they're great. I mean, there's just a small amount of water there. So some of these areas that are close to the San Jacinto River, or that could have nice little vacation spots, would be nice places for people to take their kids, parks, destinations that they could have.
You might want to look and invest in downtown Conroe. I saw plans the other day with the new Spirit of Texas Bank on 105, which has really changed the whole outlook of Conroe from 105 with the sculptures, and there's a plan to make the little river behind that similar to the Riverwalk, where you would have restaurants and townhomes available for local residents and outsiders to come visit as well. Conroe's done a good job in the community, in development, in life. What you look for is jobs. Jobs create opportunities that enhance. You get good schools and you get good property values. When your jobs go, your schools go, and your property values go. And commercial real estate 101, when we see the schools going downhill and the job sources going downhill, it's time to get out and exit that community and move on down the road. Conroe, the opportunities of growth, it's knocking on the door. It's time. We as citizens of Conroe have to take advantage of this growth and have good plans for the infrastructure, and so we can keep up with it and have good planned growth. And they've also done a good job. They developed a business park out in Conroe Park North. We've got about 20 companies, top North American companies out there that are providing good jobs. That was a focus of the leaders of the past, and they've done a good job. It's been working on it for about 20 years now. And then they also have recently developed a Conroe Tech Park, which is about 250 acres, tech savvy, beautiful office park, and that's myself and other community leaders we've been working on, trying to get a major institutional Ivy League college to our technology park, focus on science and technology.
Well, what I'd really like to see happen is I'd like to see, and I know there's a governmental push to kind of make the internet an open access and resource that everybody has. It's universally available. You don't have to worry about, I don't know what the Wi-Fi code is here, or is it capital or lowercase? And so I do hope that there is a push, as there is nationally, to kind of make that a resource it's available. Just like when you go to the courthouse, there's lights on. And when you come to Dick's studio here at Lone Star Radio, you have lights and you have resources that are publicly available where you don't have them all privately owned. And I'd like to see that happen. I don't know if it'll happen in the next decade or what have you, but that's something that in my opinion, should happen. We really appreciate you coming on here to share your vision. If you get elected, let's say election date, go time in May. If you get elected, what happens next? Do you immediately take office? Do you have to wait till January? What happens next?
The election, May 5th, please vote for Jody Czajkoski.
Jody Czajkoski, position
Community through collaboration, and you'll see our shirts in town. It says you don't have to say or spell Czajkoski to vote Czajkoski.
That, you know what, that is a smart slogan, because I can say it, but it's always difficult for me to spell. I always want to add a W.
Czajkoski.
And his lovely wife, Nicole, is the brunette favorite defense attorney that is Polish in this community. So we really appreciate her passion and her hard work and her Czajkoski that she brings to Conroe. And we really hope that you get a chance to know Jody Czajkoski on or before May the 5th. His telephone number is, again,
713-560-6069.
And you can air your grievances about Conroe and what your hopes and what's on your vision board for Conroe if you talk to Jody. But you're listening to Justice is Blonde on Lone Star Community Radio. And in the meantime, you yourself can tell him how you feel about, as a citizen of Texas, gun control, what you think we can do to keep our schools safe, especially in Conroe, where we're developing and growing, and want to keep the growth of our schools safe, where we have the right amount of teachers, the right amount of space, and the right amount of love to go around.
Whole lot of love.
A whole lot of love. Justice is blonde.
That's right. That's right. That's right, my generation. That's right. That's right. That's right, my generation. Yeah, all about a good time. Yeah, all about a good life.
Thank you for checking out this production of Lone Star Community Radio. Lone Star Community Radio is Montgomery County's community radio station. Don't forget to check out this show and many others across the Lone Star Community Radio Network, either live on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, the Lone Star Internet Radio app, or irlonestar.com's live audio stream, and on replay on podcast, Channel 12's Our City TV in Conroe, or Channel 21 KVQT in Houston, and of course their YouTube channel. This production is copyrighted and all rights are reserved by Lone Star Community Radio. Have a question regarding this program or other Lone Star Community Radio shows? Want to sponsor or start your own show? Call the station message line at 936-647-3776 or email the station at lscrstudios@gmail.com.